Morning, everyone. How you doing? How was your weekend? Good, hopefully. Okay, so I noticed this particular video doing the rounds over the weekend, and I basically decided, okay, well, people are talking about it. I have my views on it too, so I'm going to do my own little commentary and basically sort of express what I think and feel. So we're just going to play through it, and I'll stop it and add my thoughts as and when. Okay? All right, here we go.
An 11-year-old boy who was killed in Springfield last year. It was a car accident involving a Haitian immigrant. You said that he was murdered. His father said that's not true. It was an accident. Here's what he said to you.
Politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. They have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies.
Senator, he's asking for you to apologize. Will you?
Dana, first of all, my heart goes out to the Clark family, and I don't bring their son's name up because they've clearly expressed a preference for politicians to not bring their son's name up. I wish them all the best. I can't believe what kind of a tragedy they've experienced, but I'm still going to keep on talking about what the migrants have done to Springfield, Ohio, and what Kamala Harris's open border has done to Springfield, Ohio.
Okay, the problem I have with this is that at no point does he acknowledge the fact that he basically lied and misrepresented what happened for political reasons. That's my problem with it. Like the father is saying, yes, an accident happened and my child died, and what he's saying is, J.D. Vance is basically saying is, well, I don't care what the details are, I'm still going to use this. Even though, yep, I made it up and I said that it was murdered when they weren't, I don't care, I'm still going to use this. Now, the thing is, there's nothing illegitimate about bringing attention to a situation, saying that there's concern here. There's concern about access to facilities. There's concern about access to government programs. There's concern about housing. There's concern about school space. There's concern about access to hospital space. These are all perfectly good, legitimate things which should be discussed. But you don't achieve that by lying and basically stirring up hatred. That's really not good. You don't do that. This should be something people are very concerned about. Because when you're actively saying, no, a child was murdered by an immigrant, it's very different from there was an accident. Like there's a very different moral standard there, a moral question. Anyway.
And Dana, I think this illustrates the entire contrast between how we're trying to go about this debate and how a lot of the Democrats are trying to go about this debate. They're talking about 12 Proud Boys marching in Springfield, Ohio. They're talking about the frankly fake debunkings of a lot of these stories that are out there. I'm talking to my constituents and I'm hearing terrible things about what's going on in Springfield and Kamala Harris's
Okay, I understand that, but the reality is if you're hearing terrible things, then report them accurately. Okay, seeing an increased amount of white supremacists and white nationalists in Springfield because of rhetoric that is knowingly false is a newsworthy thing. Okay, and like I said before, there's nothing wrong. If Vance wants to do a piece and talk about like some of the genuine issues on the ground, then we can have that conversation, and it's a conversation that should take place. But if the President of the United States and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his running mate, J.D. Vance, are actively saying things which aren't true, knowingly are not true, okay, in order to whip things up, that is also newsworthy, because the consequences of that are newsworthy.
Open border policies have caused these problems. The hospitals are overwhelmed, Dana. The schools are overwhelmed.
Okay, all of these are perfectly fine. These are legitimate concerns. These are legitimate concerns.
Local services are completely overwhelmed. You have people who can't afford housing. Homelessness has gone up. Murders are up by 81% because of what Kamala Harris has allowed to happen to this small community.
Okay, that's where I draw the line, because now you have to ask a serious question, which is, can you back that up? And as best as I've been able to tell, they have not been able to back that up.
I'm going to keep on talking about that. Now, of course, we can criticize violence. We can also still talk about the problems that are happening in Springfield, and we should be able to do both those things simultaneously, Dan.
And that's fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The problem is you have the president and his running mate lying and making things up in order to do it. Okay, if you're whipping things up, if you're saying that, no, there are people in your community who are going around killing your children, eating your pets, that's going to have a real consequence. And part of that consequence, ironically enough, is white nationalist groups going to Springfield.
Just once and for all, you again started this in part by saying that, at which Donald Trump repeated on the debate stage, that, and he didn't say anything about the policies that you're talking about. He just said Haitians are eating dogs and cats.
Yes,
Can
he
you
did.
affirmatively say now that that is a rumor that has no basis with evidence?
Dana, the evidence is the first-hand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And by the way, I've been trying to talk about the problems in Springfield.
The problem with that is that whenever you actually look and listen to what people are saying, they don't say, I saw this. What they say is, I've heard rumors. Everyone, as far as I can tell, I could be wrong, as far as I can tell, everyone's basically saying the same thing. They've all heard rumors. They've heard stories from other people that something might have happened. Okay? Now, personally, I expect a little bit better in terms of when it's reported or when presidents of the United States or potential VPs from the United States repeat things. It's usually a good idea to check something like that before you just say it.
Springfield for months, and the American media ignored it. There was a congressional hearing just last week of angel moms who lost children because Kamala Harris let criminal migrants into this country who then murdered their children. The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about.
Every single time someone like this says the media is ignoring it, you can almost always guarantee 9 times out of 10 that it was reported. In my experience, whenever someone says, the mainstream media is ignoring this, the liberal media is ignoring this, whenever you go into Google and you look it up, there will be reports on it.
Cat memes. If I have to,
But it
if
wasn't
I have
just a
to
meme.
create
No, it wasn't a meme.
stories so that the American media.
Right, okay, there it is. Just a minute. Let's be very clear. This wasn't a story they created per se. What this was, and it's even worse than that, it is even worse, was Trump watched a video online, okay, of apparently something, it was connected to Facebook, in which someone says they thought they saw someone doing something to a cat, eating a cat. And it turns out the woman in question was a national who I believe had a drug problem, but they reported it as Haitians eating cats. Trump watched this, did what Trump always does, which is just blurt it out because he doesn't bother to check it first time. Just wants to, I've seen this on TV, therefore equals true. I'm going to repeat it. And now, because they probably weren't expecting that, my guess is the Republican Party and Vance are basically having to kind of backpedal in terms of the reason for it and make that part up. So they can't be seen to sort of say, yeah, Trump just said something kind of crazy. They have to say, no, this was an intentional meme we created. Okay, we intentionally did this in order to draw attention to something that's going on. In other words, we're lying in order to get attention.
Media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys.
Okay, right there, he just said it. He is basically saying, in a nutshell, I will lie if I think it gets the result I want.
are completely letting Kamala Harris coast. You had one interview with her. You talk about pushing back against me, Dana. You didn't push back against the fact that she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why a lot of Americans can't afford food and housing.
That is absolute nonsense. Okay, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Right, it's completely separate things. First and foremost, food and housing is not connected to the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, the issues with inflation started before then, hence why it's called the Reduction Act. Now, I can go into a little bit of detail about that in a second, but the inflation again wasn't caused purely during the Biden administration. It just wasn't. It started out in the Trump administration. Now, that's not an attack against Trump. Trump was doing what other nations were doing. He was putting vast amounts of money into the system whilst constructing supply. So you have a lot of demand, not that much supply. The end result is prices go up. Okay, I watched a video earlier today in which someone said that it makes perfect sense. Had Trump won in 2020, we would be referring to this as Trump's inflation. Because that's how it works. When someone gets into power, regardless of good things or bad things, everything's attributed to them, rightly or wrongly. There are plenty of cases where great things have happened in the economy, and it has had absolutely nothing to do with the administration in charge. That's economics. That's typically how things work. Okay, you shouldn't always go, this person's in charge, therefore this is their fault, or well done for them for doing this. They're often not connected. The Inflation Reduction Act did cause a bit of inflation, but it was in very specific areas because its goal was to try and onshore certain types of industries, namely chip production and manufacturing. Okay. Now, generally speaking, when things are done offshore, they're done offshore because it's cheaper, because the labor is cheaper. Labor is one of the main constituents of main aspects of price and of cost of something. When it's brought back onshore, obviously Americans cost more money. Therefore, the end product costs more money. That is an inflationary thing. Okay, but that isn't the reason why. You got to bear in mind, the primary driver for things like housing cost is the what's it called now? It's the Federal Reserve rate. That's the main driver for the cost. Especially in terms of things like borrowing and things of that nature. So that isn't true. I don't know why he's conflating those two things.
Just said that
We ought
you're
to be
creating
talking
a
about
story.
public policy.
Oh.
Illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that, but yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about this story and the
Nonsense, you didn't. Trump fumbled because he was exacerbated and mentioned a video, some spurious video that he watched, and now everyone in the Republican Party is scrambling to try and make up a plausible backstory. And the plausible backstory is, yes, we will lie if we think it gets us what we want.
suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Do you condemn the Proud Boys, even if it's just 12, even if it's just one marching in Springfield?
Dana, I condemn all white supremacists. I'm obviously not. I'm married to a non-white person. I don't like these people, but I think that we have to keep our focus not on 12 marchers going down the street, but on the fact that thousands of residents have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's policy. I find this very unusual, Dana, that the American media is more interested in a bunch of losers marching down the street than they are in the fact that Kamala Harris has made these people's lives worse.
The reason why they're interested is because the primary reason they are there is because of the rhetoric, the knowingly false rhetoric pushed by Vance and Trump. Specifically Trump, however, Vance has to go out there and kind of make up plausible justifications for it. They knowingly lied about an event, several events, and this is the repercussion of those lies. That's why it's newsworthy. What they should have done is not lied and perhaps kept pushing the idea of, yes, we put a lot of people into this area, which now means housing costs is going up. It's difficult to get a place in hospital. It's difficult to get a place in school. Residents are concerned. These are legitimate things you can talk about. What he did, though, and what Trump did, wasn't that. They lied.
worse. I'm not talking about 12 Proud Boys. I'm talking about 40,000 residents, 40,000 constituents of mine, many of whom can't afford housing and food because of Kamala Harris's open border. That is what I want to focus the media's attention on.
It's worth pointing out that from what I understand, the Haitians only went there relatively recently. So I don't think the border thing has anything to do with cost of housing or cost of food. That's a separate question. That's down to monetary policy and production, i.e. the lack of houses. The biggest reason why there's a lack of houses is because American housing production hasn't really returned to what it was before 2008, I believe. So that's the primary problem. There's just not enough homes.
On. We're going to keep on doing it because I think the American people deserve.
And that's fine. You can keep on doing that, but don't lie. Don't lie and then be all shocked and surprised when people say, hey, why are you lying? Don't do that.
Deserve a government that puts their interests first. And can I make just one more final point about this, Dana?
Yes, please.
You've heard a lot of the media focusing on every possible distraction from the story in Springfield. You've heard them focus on these Proud Boys marches. You've heard
who are only there because of your rhetoric, right?
Just in this interview, Dana, the suggestion that because some psychopath is calling in a bomb threat, somehow we have to then ignore 40,000 Springfieldians.
No, you don't have to ignore them, but it's a part of it's because of the rhetoric by Trump and the Trump team, this is now happening. That is newsworthy. It is.
Not what I
who are
suggested.
having their lives worsened by Kamala Harris's policies. Well, what is the implication, Dana? I actually love to have this conversation right now live on air.
Right.
What is the implication when you say you calling out these problems has caused a bomb threat? You accused me of causing a bomb threat. Doesn't that mean you should shut up about the residents of Springfield? Don't you realize, please?
Quoting, begging, he said, after the bomb threats, begging federal officials, to please stop putting negative attention on his city. And I'm
Stop lying. The way I would go about this is how I would basically say this. When he says, how are these things connected? I would say, look, as a direct result of the lies which you have knowingly said you put out there, you lied about these things. There are things that can be talked about, but you knowingly lied, has caused a surge in, has caused serious concern, and that's why they're there. Fundamentally, that is why they're there. They wouldn't be there if you hadn't done this.
I'm not talking about the policies. I'm not talking about the very real challenges that Springfield has. I'm talking about baseless rumors about Haitians eating dogs and cats. And that, after that was said on a debate stage, that is when these bomb threats started. And that is a fact. Senator, I just want to move on. I have two other quick issues separate from this that I want to talk to you about.
Dana,
go ahead.
Again,
please, go ahead.
I think this is actually I think this is an important conversation.
Okay.
Look, the Springfield mayor, he's dealing with a lot of terrible things. I certainly sympathize with the guy, and we're going to try to help him out. But he did not accuse me of inciting a bomb threat. He just didn't. And if we're going to take the firsthand accounts of people who are on the ground in Springfield, why don't you bring on some of the people on your program who say that the migrants are eating their pets? You're applying a...
To the best of my knowledge, I haven't heard that.
Double
But anyway,
standard here.
we're
You're
going-
saying
it's
if
not a
one
double
person
standard.
accuses J.D. Vance, I'm going to take that person's
you have
word
somebody
as the
who's-
gospel
you
truth,
have somebody
even if
whose
you
name-
misrepresent it. If you have another person who's saying they're eating the cats, you're going to completely ignore them, attack them, silence them, and harass them. That double standard is why the people don't trust the media and why we're not talking about public policy 51
Jesus.
days out from a presidential election.
Okay.
Okay, let's be super clear what's actually happened here. Let's be very, 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 very clear. Trump watched a random video online, okay, in which some boomer basically accused an American national of eating a cat. Look, this wasn't a Haitian immigrant. This was an American national. That basically went round. Trump caught it. Trump repeated it. Now that's been repeated. Now they've basically gone around and trying to find any evidence at all of something like this happening. Now, there are rumors, but as best as I can tell, all I'm hearing about so far is just rumors. People saying, I've heard of someone who's this happened to their cat, or I think I know someone who said that this happened to their cat. No one actually has come out and said, this happened here. That hasn't happened yet. to the best of my knowledge. Right. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there. Okay. Take care. Bye.